Hi everybody, my name is Lynn Hayes. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, I'm really glad you've joined me today. In today's video, we'll be talking about the astrology for the week of February 22nd through March 1st, 2021. There's a few things I would like to talk about, of course, before we get to the astrology for the week ahead. One thing that came up in the comments from last week's video is somebody who was asking why her life is so hard. That question is not new. I think that's an interesting topic to discuss when we're talking about an astrological chart. Some people have astrological charts that don't involve a lot of trauma. They don't involve a lot of challenge. They don't show violence. They don't show depression particularly. And some people seem to have pretty easy lives. And why is that? Is a really interesting question. It's very difficult, I think, to look at astrology without having some sense that we are on the planet in a body with an astrological chart, because there are certain things that we need to learn. If we don't think about life on Earth as being a school, as being the Earth school, and here we are, working through certain things, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And as to why some people have a difficult chart and some people don't, why some people seem to have very difficult lives and others don't, that sort of is a bigger question that can be explained by some philosophies. My personal theology, what I really believe to be true from my experience in doing thousands of charts over 35 years, is that the birth chart really represents to me our course of study in this life. It's as if when you were getting ready to come to Earth, you met with your advisors, your spiritual guides, and you put together a course of study. And maybe these were things that you didn't do so well in another lifetime. Maybe there are things that were traumatic, or maybe you had a lifetime where you exerted too much power and you wanted to sort of rectify that. And then you come into this life having no power, but power issues or something that I see in the chart. There's usually Mars square Pluto or Mars opposite Pluto, and this often shows something that we came in with. So if we came in with it, where did it come from? We were born with these attributes already. I can talk to somebody that I've never met before and have a pretty accurate view of what their childhood might have been like. So why is that? And I feel like if we understand this at a certain level, then we can really no longer blame our surroundings. We can't blame our parents because our chart shows these things before anything ever even happened to us. We can't really blame the people around us that we feel victimized us, because victimization might be shown in the chart as something that we need to work with. So much of how we approach these matters really have to do with our attitude and with our viewpoint. As long as we cultivate blame and anger and rage about something as coming to us from outside, we can never really get those lessons that we need, and in order to really progress and evolve in our life. So I say all this as somebody who has a very difficult chart myself. I have the moon conjunct Pluto, square Venus and Scorpio. I have the sun sandwiched between Saturn and Neptune, square to Uranus. I have Chiron conjunct Mars. These are just a few of the things that I have. And this has been a very difficult life for me, and I've had to learn these lessons firsthand. This isn't just theory to me. This is something that I really believe in, something that I've experienced. And this is really why I call my practice astrodynamic. I can tell you why you've had problems in your life. I can tell you why your life has been hard. But that's not really enough. What do we need to learn from that, and how can we grow past it? Because hidden in every astrological challenge is the key, this golden nugget of grace, and the key to resolving, and not just resolving, but really thriving under that aspect. So I hope that makes some sense for you all, and if you have questions or comments about that, please leave them for me in the comment box. Getting back to the astrology for the week, Mercury just turned direct. It was retrograde for 3 weeks, as it often does, and it has just turned direct. There are a lot of different ways to evaluate a shadow period of Mercury retrograde. I'll leave a link to an article I wrote about that in the description box. But I feel like the easiest way really to look at the shadow period is the period of time when Mercury's apparent motion continues to be very slow. So as a planet appears to change direction, its motion starts to slow down. And on the day that it actually changes direction, that planet appears to be at a standstill in the sky. Then it changes direction. In this case, Mercury has turned direct, but it still is moving very slowly, and it takes about a week to 10 days for Mercury's motion to return to its normal pace. During this time, we are beginning to approach a more normal experience of communication, information processing, equipment, all of these sorts of things. But it's not back to normal yet for another week or so. So still be careful with all of your communication, any kind of contracts that you need to enter into, any kind of agreements or discussions. But as I like to say, that's not a bad thing to remember anytime, whether Mercury is retrograde or not. Also this week we have a full moon in Virgo. The sun has entered Pisces, and so we're moving out of this heavily Aquarian time that we were in January. At the Aquarius new moon, we had 6 planetary bodies in Aquarius. Lots of electromagnetic, electrical energy, lots of awakening. I know people are saying on my Facebook page that I haven't been sleeping, and I personally haven't really slept that much. And now we have the sun moving into Pisces. Venus moves into Pisces this week, and so we're starting to move out of Aquarius season and into the season of Pisces. But first we have the Virgo full moon. During the full moon, the moon is always opposite the sun, and the light of the moon is brighter. The light of the moon, the instincts, the emotions of our nature starts to become more important than the solar conscious mind, which in this case is Pisces. The full moon in Virgo gives us a real need, because the moon has to do with our emotions, to see where improvement is needed and to be able to make a plan so that that improvement can start to unfold. Anytime we have a full moon, because the sun and moon are in opposite signs, they're in polarities, we have to find a way to balance these two. In this case, we have Virgo, the details of life, the rituals, the routines, and then we have Pisces, the imagination, the dreaminess, the spirituality, the transcendence. The exact alignment of the full moon is Saturday at about 3:17 a.m. So we're really going to start to experience that a few days before as the energies start to build. So finding ways to balance the sort of humdrum details of our life with some magic, some imagination, some of that Pisces fairy dust is going to be very useful, especially after the moon moves into Virgo, and I'll talk about that when we start getting into the details of the week. This full moon has an interesting alignment, which is a yod, which occurs when there is a sextile, a 60-degree aspect between 2 planets, each of which quincunx, which is 150 degrees, and each of which make a 150-degree angle, which is a point of pressure that we call a quincunx, to another planet or planetary body, and in this case it's the moon. The Virgo moon is going to be in this awkward aspect to Saturn and also to Chiron. This aspect of the yod, I think, is often misunderstood. There's this idea, it's called the finger of God, and when people see them in their chart, they say, oh, this is the answer to my whole life, this finger of God. It points to the direction of your fate. And it's somewhat significant because you have these 2 awkward aspects that put a lot of pressure without any release. That's what the quincunx does. So in this case, to the moon, the Virgo moon. But then there's the harmonious sextile, which creates some balance. So in this case of the full moon, we have that lovely sextile between Saturn and Chiron. This aspect sort of dovetails with the challenging aspect of Saturn squaring Uranus for much of the year. The 2 occur right around the same time as each other. And so while we have the Saturn square to Uranus forcing this intense change, we also are going to be having this harmonious sextile from Saturn to Chiron, helping to facilitate that change. So this dynamic is embedded also in the chart of the full moon, and it's putting pressure on the Virgo moon. And the Virgo moon is wanting to create order in our life, to create a plan. And this is something that I feel like a lot of people are experiencing right now under COVID. You know, our lives have been changed so much, and many of us haven't really gotten into a groove under the new reality, under the new situation. And many people, I think, are hoping that the vaccines are going to bring things back to normal, and then we'll just sort of revert back to how things were before. But I don't think it's going to be like that. There's a reset. And right now, this Virgo full moon, I feel, is really putting pressure on us to create this reset, to reset our day-to-day routines, to reset the patterns that help to give our lives a sense of security, a sense of structure. And all of this is all tied into the full moon chart. This yod also includes the opposition from the sun to the moon, which is sandwiched in between the sextile. Some people call this a boomerang yod. I'm not really sure why. And some people call this a focused yod. Now let's talk about the week ahead. On Monday, February 2nd, the moon is in the sign of Cancer. There's really not very much planetary energies to talk about for that day, but the Cancer moon does tend to make us feel more emotional. Don't be surprised if your feelings are more readily available to you. The moon in Cancer seems to bring up this richness of the emotional life. There may be more of an interest in cooking and in taking care of other people. When the moon is in Cancer, it can be very difficult to be alone, especially if you're a more emotional, a more kind of connecting sort of person. So just watch for that. Especially around midday that day, Eastern Standard Time, when the Cancer moon is going to make a square to Chiron. When the sensitive moon is in a challenging aspect to Chiron, we can sometimes be more sensitive. Our wounds are more easily triggered. We can more easily trigger other people. So just watch for that. But after around 2 or 3 Eastern time, please adjust for your own time zone, the moon will harmonize with Uranus, and that's going to sort of bring everything back to normal. On Tuesday, February 23rd, the Cancer moon is very active. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we're also building towards a harmonious trine from Mars in Taurus to Pluto in Capricorn. I think of Mars and Pluto as really the 2 creation planets. Mars represents our individual will. You know, it shows what we want, how we go about getting what we want. And Pluto is like the will of the higher self, is really how I look at it. And if Mars is the personal will, Pluto is kind of the universal will. Pluto is the planet of power. It's the planet of fate. And so when we have a harmonious interaction between Mars and Pluto, it tends to be easier to manifest. The energies are more easily available to us. When this aspect aligns on Wednesday the 24th, that should be a day when we have pretty good energy. You know, Mars in Taurus isn't always the most energetic Mars in the world, but when it's harmonizing in a trine to Pluto, that can really help. If there's anything that you want to do that requires physical energy or a lot of focus in terms of your mental energy, physical energy, the energy of your whole being, really, Wednesday the 24th is a good day for that. But meanwhile, on Tuesday, we do have these lunar aspects involving the Cancer moon. First, in the early afternoon around 1:00 p.m. Eastern Time, the moon harmonizes in a trine to Neptune. This can be a time of great creativity. Neptune has a lot to do with our imagination. It also has to do with our spiritual experience, the desire for transcendence. This can be a lovely time for any kind of spiritual exploration, to listen to music, to create something. If you're any kind of artist or even a writer, it could be a good time for journaling because the emotions are very available and very present. Then later in the evening, Eastern Time, around 10-11 p.m., the moon harmonizes in a sextile to Mars, which is very energetic and generally creates a lot of positive energy, but also opposite Pluto. So first, the moon will sextile Mars, and then it will oppose Pluto right before midnight on Tuesday. When the Cancer moon is opposite Pluto, there's a lot of intensity. The Cancer moon is so sensitive, so vulnerable, and Pluto can be kind of ruthless. So this can be a time when a lot of dark emotions maybe come up. If there are some dark feelings that you've been hiding from, don't be surprised if they emerge under this influence. But the lunar aspects only last for a few hours, maybe 2 to 4 hours. So this will be out of range pretty quickly. That takes us to Wednesday, February 24th. We're going to have this harmonious alignment between Mars and Pluto that day. So it's a good day overall for any kind of planning, organizing, creating greater stability, especially because Mars is in Taurus, Pluto is in Capricorn. Both Taurus and Capricorn help us to be more grounded and more stable. But meanwhile, the moon will move into Leo at about 7:24 a.m. Eastern time. The moon going into Leo just helps to expand the fire that's already present with the Mars trine to Pluto. The Leo moon helps to energize our creativity, our sense of purpose, our desire to have a life that has real meaning for us, for ourselves. Leo, of course, is the sign of the personal ego. Has to do with the strength of our sense of self, of how we take pride in what we do. So the Leo moon generally has a pretty big presence. The Leo moon on the 24th is quite active in the evening Eastern time. First, it makes a trine to Chiron at about 8 p.m. Eastern time. The Leo moon harmonizing with Chiron is very good for any kind of internal balance, psychological health. But then shortly after that, the Leo moon makes a challenging square to Uranus. Uranus is the planet of change, of course. It's the planet of ideas and intuitions that just sort of come from nowhere or anywhere. And when the moon is in a square to Uranus, there can be an awakening of some kind. There can be some sort of great realization that seems to come from nowhere. It's a square aspect, which can be somewhat challenging. So it could affect our nervous system in a way that might feel a little bit jangly. But at the same time, we have that lovely Mars-Pluto trine, which I think will help that. I think that will help to sort of ground us and help us to feel more centered in the midst of it. And then just before 10 p.m. that day Eastern time, the moon will be opposite Saturn. And this can be a time where we can feel somewhat blocked, where we might feel somewhat sad or depressed. So there's a lot of different things happening here. There's this sort of overall positive energy of Mars to Pluto. There's the Leo moon, which really needs to feel special and validated, harmonizing with Chiron to help those feelings to be more balanced. There's a square to Uranus, which suggests that there's a need to change what we're doing, and the opposition to Saturn, which might cause us to feel that what we're doing isn't really good enough. So there's a lot of emotional stuff that's happening that day. But overall, I think it's positive and productive. On Thursday, February 25th, Venus moves into Pisces. We already have Neptune in Pisces. The Sun is in Pisces. Now Venus will be in Pisces. As we move into this period where there's more Pisces energy, there's less of a focus on change and of this radical need to do something very different, and more of an influence on bringing more of an experience of peace into our own lives. We can do this through creativity. We can do this through spirituality. We can do this through artistry. You know, the idea of creating something out of nothing is very Piscean. Of course, Pisces also is the addict. We can also do this through watching too much television, drinking too much wine. Hopefully, we'll go in the other direction. But generally bringing more experiences of beauty and harmony into our life. I know we often think of, beauty and harmony as being Libra and Venus, but Neptune and Pisces. But the Neptune rulership of Pisces brings that sense of transcendence and peacefulness into that Pisces experience. The Jupiter rulership, of course, brings a sense of expansion and wanting to keep growing, keep expanding our lives until we completely fill the container in which we find ourselves. Later that day at about 4:13 p.m., the Sun in Pisces forms a sextile to Uranus, which is in Taurus. This is a harmonious aspect. It's not very strong. It's not very powerful. You may not even be aware of it. But there's a bit of an awakening of creativity here. There's a sense that we can awaken into some sort of new idea that will create a small change that will eventually have a bigger impact. And since the Leo moon is opposite Jupiter that day as well, there's really a sense of expansion here. There's a sense of something new that kind of pops into our world. On Friday, February 26th, the Leo Moon is going to square Mars in Taurus at about 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. This can be a time when we feel kind of irritated, more easily angered. Leo is a fiery moon. Mars is the fire planet. So when those two are not getting along, there can be some resistance. This could have the potential just to bring up something that maybe you've been irritated about, but you've been trying not to feel it. It's likely to come out then. I don't see that as a bad thing because it may give you the potential to be able to finally resolve a situation that has been unresolved. The moon's going to be moving into Virgo at about 12:07 p.m. that day, and that's going to really take us into the beginnings of the energies of the full moon. When the moon moves from Leo to Virgo, there's less of a sense of, oh, what's going to be good for me, and more of a sense of, what is it that I need to do? How can I make my life more effective? Virgo is all about work. It's all about the details that need to come together in order to be systematic, productive. It's a very good time for organizing, of course. Saturday, February 27th brings the Virgo Full Moon, which I talked about earlier, so just watch for this. I always feel like it's very useful to mark the passage of the moon, maybe not the quarter points, the waxing and waning squares, but if we mark the new moon and the full moon, those are times when we can really kind of track an evolution. Something new takes place at the new moon. There's a fresh new slate. There's an opportunity to start something new, to make some sort of a leap. And then when the moon is full, there's a culmination. There's a lot of emotional power there. On Sunday morning, February 28th, the Virgo moon is very active. Of course, the full moon energies are still pretty powerful, and the Virgo moon is going to form a trine to Pluto and a trine to Mars. These are harmonious, supportive aspects. This can be really helpful for the Virgo moon because Virgo, it's an earth sign, but it's ruled by Mercury, which is a planet of the mind. And Virgo does a lot of thinking about how to put things into place, how things need to be organized, but sometimes needs a little push of fire in order to actually make things happen. So when the Virgo moon is harmonizing with Mars and with Pluto, that gives us this boost to be able to put whatever it is that we formulated at the full moon. These trines on Sunday morning can really help us to give birth to them. Then the moon moves from Virgo into Libra at 2:16 p.m. Eastern Time. The moon moving into Libra gives us more of a need for sort of a sense of equanimity. Libra is all about relationships, of course, love and beauty. You know, it's a good time to get your hair done or to do a makeover, but it's also one thing that's often not understood about Libra is the need for balance, the need to achieve some sort of balance and harmony. And when the moon's in Libra, we all sort of share that experience. That's the energy of the day. On Monday, March 1st, the Libra moon is going to be opposite Chiron in Aries, very early in the morning at about 2:13 a.m. So this only lasts for a few hours. If you're on the East Coast, by the time you wake up, it will be gone. If you're on the West Coast of the U.S., this is going to start building the night before, obviously. Libra is so sensitive to any dissonance. It's not sensitive like the Cancer moon, which is very vulnerable, but Libra is an air sign. It has to do with the mind as well. And Libra is sensitive to the perception that things are out of balance. So when the Libra moon is opposite Chiron, there can be a real need to find that place of healing that's going to bring everything back into balance. Other than that, though, Monday, March 1st doesn't really have a lot of planetary aspects. So we'll have another video then. I hope you have a great week. Thanks so much for joining me. Leave any questions below, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.